Let me welcome you all to this 3-day international online conference on the relevance of Yuga Dharma in reforming Hindu religion. I have Bhatt and myself, Srila teacher, etc. Is how we selected because this is very pertinent. Apart from an academic, dialogue, this is a very serious issue to my thinking and to the thinking of others, because our Hindu society, we know that India has amazing wisdom. India excels in spiritual wisdom, culture, knowledge, and in everything we excel. But at the practical level, we find that the Hindu society, largest majority of the members of Hindu society are leading a life of, not a cultured life, in the sense that their way of life, their, the way they worship, their faith, belief systems, their mode of worship, their material life, because this reflects in material life. One's culture definitely reflects in the material way of life also. And I am remembering when I met my guru in 1986 for the first time, Navajyoti Sri Karunaguru Guru, the founder guru of Shantigiri Ashram. He asked me, so you call your Bharadamba, you can understand, Bharadamba, we call mother. Our country we call mother. You say that you have all the greatest wisdom and you had the material prosperity of India was something great. Everything you have had. But today, and he told me, you worship Saraswati for wealth. You worship Ganapati to get rid of the obstacles. Then you worship the Devada of knowledge. But despite all these things, see the real state of the Indians, real state of our people. For knowledge, all your knowledge, academic knowledge, everything you have borrowed from West. Such a country which had excelled in all realms of knowledge today, all our knowledge system, because personally we say we glorify our culture, our knowledge systems, etc., etc. But at the existential level, for our livelihood, for our development, for everything, we borrow the knowledge system of others. For making wealth, we, especially from Kerala and from all over India, we go to other countries and do whatever they demand from us in all other way, our people. So for knowledge, for material prosperity, today you depend on others. But you say you had everything, you worship all this prosperity in knowledge, you worship all your deities or gods like that. Why you are in such a state? Then since I was fresh from my research and studies, my PhD, I had a little knowledge of the economic history of the world, the transition, the developmental history of modern world, the development, underdevelopment thesis, etc. I had enough knowledge how the market developed, the industrial revolution, market developed in West that way. Then Guru asked me, why you could not develop that way? The West developed in a historical situation. Why you could not? Then Guru asked me, have you heard that this age is Kali Yuga? Guru asked me, do you know this is Kali Yuga? I said, I know it. Guru asked me, what is your view on Kali Yuga? What do you think of Kali Yuga? I said that I understand Kali Yuga is the most worst yuga of the 4 yugas. All the calamities, chaos, everything will happen in this yuga. There will be no dharma. Like that I told Guru. Whatever I have inherited, I told Guru. Then Guru told me, it was more important. No, this is how you are being taught. But this yuga is the most favorable yuga, most splendid yuga. Of the 4 yugas, Kali Yuga is the most splendid yuga. Because it is the yuga of liberation, ultimate moksha. Because we talk of moksha, we don't know what is moksha. We talk of liberation. Moksha is mochana, liberation. From one stage to another is also a liberation from one stage to another. But the ultimate liberation is possible only in Kali Yuga. Even the Devi, Devas, all the deities are praying in Sushma to get birth in this Yuga and to get final liberations to a Kalandra Guru ordained by Brahman. And it is the age of Sudra, Guru told me. Kali Sudrangal, Guru told me. Because in the Sudra means not only caste Sudra, Guru told me, but those who are ignorant, those who are devoid of jnana, supreme knowledge in this yuga. He will govern, he will control the administration, everything he will control. Then Guru told me, you see, today all over across the downtrodden section has come up. But the most pathetic thing is that Shudra has not been given Brahma Jnanam, supreme knowledge. He has not been given knowledge. He has got material knowledge, but he has not the inner knowledge. Samskara he doesn't have. Therefore, though he is in the higher acclaims of administration, society, democracy is determined by the largest majority of poor people. But whenever he is in power, he quarrels. He doesn't know how to manage things. Because for years, centuries, thousands of years, this largest strata were deprived of access to knowledge, access to acquire knowledge. Therefore, that faculty has been shrunk. They don't have that niceties of culture. Now you have to impart to them knowledge. You have to elevate them, because that way only this country can be liberated. They have to come up. And Guru told me, of the whole people, the Brahmins, not that I use them, those, because they have had the knowledge of Vedas, they know how to do things. They have been trained. Historically, they have been trained. If they find it, or if they realize that in this Kali Yuga, the worship forms, religious faith, and practices of Treta and Dwapara are irrelevant, because each yuga has got its own karma, dharma. All our shastras very well put it forward. But when come to Kali Yuga, I have gone through a little bit. But regarding the dharma, karma, worship system, practices, and the belief system of Kali Yuga, when come to that, shastras say no specific thing beyond what we are in the past, not, but they say in Vayu Purana or Mahabharata, etc. We find that in Kali Yuga also you chant Mahanarayana mantra, and the gift is considered the most uppermost this karma or dharma of Kali Yuga, gift, and chanting, by chanting Mahanarayana mantra, you can get over the calamities in Kali Yuga. It is what is, that is why Hare Rama, Hare Krishna is called movement, etc., etc. Beyond that, but very pertinently, Sri Krishna said, in each Sambhavami Yuge Yuge, it did not mean that he will come again in that form, or his name is to be chanted in all other time to come. He never thought. But we find in Indian spiritual history, there had been interpolations and all these things in Indian, because since the eclipse of Atmajnana Marga, we had Atmajnana Marga. Since the eclipse of Atmajnana Marga, Vedic period, we find the shrinkage of Hinduism. After that, we find less evolved, less spiritually evolved people, gurus, acharyas came, they interpreted, reinterpreted according to their vision. They interpreted and formulated all these things. Therefore, the eclipse of Atmajnana Marga in Indian spiritual history was a turning point. And after that, we find there had been deviations and distortions in our worship system. We find that the largest poor people, lower caste, worship demonic powers, dark forces as God. We know that if we worship such forces, where our jiva soul will go, how it can be raised, how our consciousness can be raised. Because only if I follow a noble man, we don't follow lesser people. In our academic also, wherever, all our progress depends on how we are groomed, whom we follow as a role model. In quality also, it is very, very important. Therefore, Navajot Sri Karunaguru proclaimed to the world that in this yuga, all our calamities, why we are not progressing despite the sacrifice of since Lord Krishna, Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanuja, Narayana Guru, all our gurus, we find that they all, Tiruvalluvar, everybody came. They all strived, they all preached, they all sought to correct the deviations and distortions in Hinduism, Hindu religion, our practices. But afterwards, we find that they were all confined. Moreover, none of them seriously discussed on Yuga Dharma, or none of them discussed whether the present Dharma and Karma worship systems, belief systems, practices are in conformity with the Dharma of Kali Yuga, this Yuga. None of them has focused on this. Though they were all great gurus, they did not. But Guru came and said they could not do it, because one more thing I will finish. One more thing. Because Navajot Sri Karunaguru revealed that it was not the fault of these great acharyas why they could not focus upon. Because in 1973, at the time of spiritual fulfillment of Navajot Sri Karunaguru, it was revealed from Brahma Prakasham that there occurred an error in the 3rd Chaduryuga of 7th Manjundra. 25 Chaduryugas back, there occurred an error in spiritual vision of a great Kalandra Guru. That error invoked curse from Brahma Prakasham. After that, the memory of Manu and Manu Dharma was vanished from human mind, human society, and the curse continued. Thereafter, there had been striving to connect humanity with the supreme light. But we find that these were arrested at some point, only up to Trimurti system. Thereafter, humanity could evolve. Beyond the Trimurti system, spiritual pursuit could not be materialized. There, everything else. Then, on the basis of Vedanta, we justify, philosophize everything. But at the practical level, all our puja, worship ends up with the Trimurti system. Guru told this. Therefore, Guru said that in this yuga, this humanity is to be connected with supreme power. Only through a Atmajnani Kalandra Guru this is possible. And the dharma, karma, worship system, everything, our prayer, everything has to change according to the dharma. Then only Hindu society can elevate, get rid of this emotional divide, spiritual divide, mental divide, and they can be one and progress, and India will rise to the pinnacle of human history. India will rise to the Gurusthanam only when Hindu society is emotionally, spiritually united. And this is the age of one universal worship of one universal God through Guru Marga. So this we have to discuss, because all of you have very deep knowledge in Hindu Shastras, and this knowledge is to be conjoined with our present state, and we have to relook. Is there any sense in the revelation of Navajyoti Sri Karunaguri Guru also? Why we have all these things? So with these words, let me come to my designated duty of welcoming all our guests. So let me welcome, because S.R. Bhaji is chairing this session. Let me welcome Professor S.R. Bhatt.
Thank you.
He is our mentor, and who is because he needs no special introduction, because all people and abroad also who are this philosophy fraternity, the whole philosophy fraternity knows the worth of Professor Bhatt as a philosopher, as a man who has a sharp, not only intelligence, beyond that, to look at things from different dimensions and to interpret, clarify. And he has been a philosopher, guide, and a friend to the philosophy fraternity, I think. And even at this stage, he worked hard to promote the cause of Indian spirituality. I welcome Professor Bhatt to this conference. Let me welcome our chief guest, or our Professor Soma Bandhopadhyaya, who delivered the inauguration address. And I don't know, because only a few days back, her name was, because I didn't have a personal contact, Professor Bhatt proposed her name. I sent her a mail, without saying anything. She accepted our invitation, and she agreed to deliver inaugural address. And most of you may be knowing Professor Soma Bandhopadhyaya. She is the Vice Chancellor of West Bengal University Teachers Training Education Planning and Administration, and Sanskrit College and University. Additional charge. But she looks after being the Vice Chancellor of two these universities. Just think of her capability. Otherwise, the concerned authorities wouldn't have made her the Vice Chancellor of two universities. Because her academic career and her career in different positions, when I went through a little of her profile, I understand that as an academician, she has written 32 books. Amazing. She has contributed more than 100 articles to different research journals, reviewed journals. And she was the director, Indian Institute of Social Welfare and Business Management, Calcutta. She was director, Women's Studies Research Center, University of Calcutta. She was registrar of University of Calcutta. So in various capacities, she has proved her mettle. And that is why she is at present the Vice Chancellor of two universities. And her knowledge in Sanskrit and Indian culture and philosophy, and we know that and that we will have of when she delivers her lecture, we will realize it. And Professor, on behalf of Shantigiri Research Foundation and on behalf of Shantigiri Ashram and all of our friends, on behalf of our friends, let me extend you a warm welcome to this
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So, let me welcome Swami Navananma Jnana Tavasi. Swami Navananma Tavasi is a director of Shantigiri Ashram. And I think most of the scholars present in this on the screen knows Swamiji personally, because whenever they have come to Shantigiri Ashram, Swamiji has spoken to, and Swamiji has tried in his level to introduce the teaching of Guru to them. And they all have later appreciated and told me it's such a humble sannyasi who has in-depth knowledge, intuitive knowledge on spirituality and Guru's knowledge, Guru's teaching. And Swamiji is today with us, and let us all welcome and extend our pranam to Swami Navananma Jnana Tavasi. Swami, namaste, pranam. So let me welcome our chief guest of today, Professor R.C. Sinha, ICPR, Chairman of Indian Council of Philosophical Research. Professor R.C. Sinha is known to all philosophy fraternity because he is such a humble, simple, unassuming philosopher. Because he speaks less, but we have come to know his magnanimity, greatness, and scholarship whenever we have come to close contact with him. This pandemic period has put constraints on his paths to discharge in such a height the duties of ICPR. But however, sitting in his house and periodically visiting ICPR, I understand during this last 10 months, several notable programs, dialogue, exercises were organized by ICPR under his chairmanship. And I welcome Professor R.C. Sinha to this conference. I welcome you, Sinhaji, on behalf of Shantigiri Research Foundation and on behalf of Shantigiri Ashram to this conference, Sinhaji. So, let me welcome Gautam Patel, Professor Gautam Patel. And Gautam Patel also needs no introduction because he is such an intuitive scholar. Other than when we were talking to each other, he was telling me, I have collected more than 3,500 records on Adi Shankara. Many of them are unpublished or unnoted, unavailable to others. So, in such a, even at this age, in such a passionate, dedicated way, and he was the professor in Punjab University, and later he was the chairman of Punjab Sanskrit Board, and he has, established his imprints in many other areas of Indian spirituality, philosophy, and culture, and discoursing and debating on various dimensions of Indian culture and spirituality. His whole life is dedicated in promoting the cause of spirituality and religion. And he has translated several Sanskrit works and like that. So we are fortunate in having him with us. I extend welcome to Gautam Patelji on behalf of Shantigiri Foundation. So let me welcome Srigala M. Nair. Srigala M. Nair is a close associate of Shantigiri Research Foundation and Shantigiri Ashram. She has been to Shantigiri Ashram several times. He has promised me to interpret his teaching and to bring out the philosophy in the teaching of Navajyoti Sri Karunagara Guru, because she has, told me, because this his teaching, the whole world needs familiarity with the Guru's teachings, because it can open up new dimensions in a spiritual pursuit of humanity. And amidst her preoccupation, because she has some other urgent programs, she will do our theme introduction. I welcome Srigala teacher on behalf of Shantigiri Research Foundation. And let me welcome Professor Balram Singh from USA. Professor Balram Singh is familiar to all of us. Professor Balram Singh is familiar because every day on YouTube or different platforms, he makes serious presentations. He bring people together and make serious deliberations on various facets of Vedic wisdom and Indian spirituality. And in America, he has got a very formidable group to discuss and discourse and unravel the possibilities of Indian wisdom and spirituality. And Western people are being familiarized on Indian spirituality of their hard work. We all appreciate his hard work. Once he has been to Shantigiri, and I hope that he will have more research and discourses under his guide suggestions, advice, guidance. I welcome you on behalf of Shantigiri fraternity, Professor Balramji, sir. Let me welcome Paneer Selvam, Professor Paneer Selvam, and he is the being of Indian philosophy. All our philosophy fraternity are known to Professor Paneer Selvam. He has his own paths. Always he takes his own path in spiritual philosophy, in the pursuit of philosophy, Indian philosophy and spirituality. And he has been a close associate of Shantigiri Ashram. Right from his visit of Shantigiri Ashram years back, he has told me he always has found something special in Guru's teaching and Shantigiri. He told me intimately. Therefore, he has that much reverence and concern to Shantigiri's cause that he has always expressed it. And he always advises, suggests us things. And I welcome this great philosopher to this conference on behalf of Shantigiri Research Foundation and Shantigiri fraternity. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Paneer Selvam, sir.
Namaste. Namaste.
Let me welcome Professor, our Brigadier Sharmaji. And Brigadier Sharmaji is a very known person. And his knowledge, though he was a brigadier, his knowledge in Hindu spirituality or Indian spirituality and Indian culture is amazing. And I understand that he has sacrificed his life to promote Indian culture and spirituality. And I welcome Brigadier Sharmaji to this conference. Welcome, Sharmaji, to this conference. Then I welcome our Deepthi Tripathi ji. And Deepthi Tripathi ji is a very known Sanskrit professor, and she is a linguistic, and she has done several work in the field of Indian culture and spirituality. And we welcome Deepti Tripathi ji to this conference. So that I hope that I welcome all others. I welcome all others. I hope Dharan Narayan Sharma ji will join us. I don't know, he has joined. Dharan Narayan Sharma ji, the chief, one important guest of today. I don't know, he has joined. And he is the central secretary of VHP. He is the central secretary of Vishwa Hindu Parishad. And we know that he's a selfless, he's a highly elevated personality. That is why he is in such a position in VHP. And he's a noble man. All his life is dedicated to promote the cause of India, to bring India into higher acclaims, and to bring the culture and Indian spirituality to the forefront of world focus. And he is respected by a large number of people in Hindu society, and his service, we all respect his service to the cause of Indian culture and spirituality. We welcome Dharan Narayan ji to this conference on behalf of Shantigiri Ashram. And I welcome my friend and philosopher Sebastian Velasheri, because Sebastian Velasheri is a close associate of Shantigiri Ashram for years, and in various capacity he promotes the cause of Shantigiri. And we know that he was the professor emeritus, UGC professor emeritus, and he was visiting professor in Jawaharlal Nehru University. That way, he has done commendable work in Indian culture and spirituality. Not last but least, let me welcome my close friend and brother TP Shashimar. And TP Shashimar has been always not only helping, he was always, he has been with us, though he has a hectic schedule always, because he's a trainer, he's a mentor, and he's an educationalist. Moreover, he's a space scientist. In various capacities, he has proved his mettle, and large number of students are being mentored by him. He's a noted mentor. Always he is involved in, dedicated his life to promote youngsters, children. So let me welcome Shashimar sir to this conference. Then Danvil Patel ji, I welcome Danvil Patel ji to this conference. So with these words, I submit. Namaskar. So I welcome Srigala teacher to make her introducing the theme.
Thank you, Dr. Gopinath ji. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, and then you have heard a very extensive welcome address. I'll try to be as brief as possible. At the outset, let me greet Professor Bhatt, who is the chair of the session, and Honorable Chairman of ICPR, Professor Sinha ji, Professor Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Bandobara, other senior professors, Gautam Patel ji, Professor Paneer Selvam, Professor Sebastian, and all the huge galaxy of scholars. I welcome to you all to this 3-day international webinar organized by Shantigiri Research Foundation. Is my voice coming fine, Professor Gopinath?
Yeah.
All right. So the theme that you have chosen as indicated by Professor Gobinath, the role of the concept of Yuga Dharma in reforming and revitalizing Hindu religious traditions. I'll just confine my address to the theme that we are going to address today. So those who have been associated a word about Gandhi and its contributions to academic philosophy. Those who have been associated with Shantigiri institution might recollect that it has been organizing international seminars. When we were in the final periods of during seminars, we have been organizing seminars for more than a decade now. And I have been sailing with them ever since they were ushered into the forum of academic philosophy. While many in the clan of academic philosophy vote against religious institutions or forums participating or debating in academic seminars, I disagree with them on two grounds. First, as far as India is concerned, religion has its presence everywhere. It is like, you'll be surprised, early Indologists have complained that we don't have any academic philosophy. It is like God was everywhere that you find people to look at him in one place. As far as India is concerned, religion was everywhere that we found it difficult to locate in one place. So as far as India is concerned, since religion is part and parcel of our cultural milieu, I don't find any difficulty in ushering in the religious institutions into academic philosophy. I remember during 80s and 90s, philosophers in India exerted a lot to convince their Western brethren that we have in India, we have had what is called secular analytic philosophy, apart from the practice-oriented theories. Those were heydays of positivism. But today, thanks to the continental thinkers, the claim of objectivity that once upon a time thought to be the criterion for meaningful assertions gave way called interpretative, pragmatic, and contextual meaning. Philosophical assertions no more need to be clinically objective, thanks to the continental thinkers. But interestingly, our thinkers have realized it long back, centuries before. During BC's Mimamsakas have realized that the meaning of a sentence lies in the concept. In India, there is little or no divide religion and philosophy. And philosophical theorizing was always meant for application, for its practice. Professor Bhatt Sahib is here. He always underscores about the prayojana vichara. Without prayojana vichara, we haven't had any theorizing in this country. And the second reason why I welcome religious institutions into academic philosophy is when the financial assistance get divided among academic disciplines. I hope Somaji listens to this. When the financial assistance gets divided among academic disciplines, philosophy gets a meager share. And the responsibilities on the shoulders of philosophy, on the other hand, is huge. And therefore, if we have to fulfill all the responsibilities that are shouldered onto us, we need to look for sister concerns with similar interests, and we need to seek assistance with such organizations. Now, get the theme of the seminar. In this webinar, we plan to discuss the significance of Yuga Dharma. Now, there are multiple difficulties that I foresee in pushing ahead this theme. Primarily, Hinduism is a term that refers to multiple meanings. This flexibility that Hinduism accommodates within itself multiple meanings, this flexibility, which should have been taken as a virtue, now has become a vice and an impediment in conducting studies on it. But I suppose we academics are by now familiarized with this hurdle, and we are quite capable of, confident in combating this challenge. The second challenge I foresee in pushing ahead this field is the residues of the positivist reluctance to bring religion into the center stage. But all this seems history now. Now religion is all welcome, particularly in the post-pandemic period. It's in a way redundant to assert that in this difficult period of COVID pandemic phobia, Religion is called upon to play significant roles in resolving cultural crises that emerge from impinging materialism on one and consumerism on the other. During the lockdown period, we have realized that how less consumerist we were, and religion was called upon, philosophy was called upon to resolve the hard puzzle. Something which is too evident, as I have said, during the period of pandemic. If you have noticed the messages that were spread during the pandemic in the WhatsApp and in the social media, they all have had either a religious theme or a philosophical theme, though it lacked clarity due to the non-professionalism of people who have handled the topic. But nevertheless, they were all philosophical in nature. So the public at large feel that now particularly, that religion is our ultimate savior and we need to resort to religion to resolve our crisis. They still hesitate because, as we know, religion has been paradoxically, though, has been holding these two positions, viewed as both the redeemer as well as the prime perpetrator of violence. Paradoxically, religion has held this position. On one side, it has been hailed as the redeemer of all our puzzles and problems, as it was evident in the period of pandemic, and on the other, it has been shown as the prime perpetrator of violence. It is therefore necessary that we remodel this useful institution. No doubt religion is found to be useful, and that history proves it. Otherwise, this institution would have died long back. So it is remodel this institution, talking about religion at large, called religion as befitting to the changing times. Now, coming to Hinduism, while Semitic religions with strict normality have their limitations in adapting themselves to the changing circumstances. That Semitic religions, which are all strictly normative in nature, have their limitations in pushing themselves to change, to fit the changing times. But Hinduism, on the contrary, has in it an inbuilt and inherent dynamism that helps it to situate itself in renewed circumstances. And among the multivarious propellers that push it internally to keep it inspired with the changing circumstances and the cultural milieux, Yuga Dharma stands uppermost. The collective Dharma, and those who have been associated with Shantigiri, and also Professor S.R. Bhatt has organized the Dhamma conferences. So Dhamma has been brought to academic forums several times during this past 1 decade. So this concept of Dharma, which itself has both the ontological and the ethical shades in it, as in the case of many concepts in Indian philosophy, carries an intrinsic adaptability and evolves along with changing times. The notion of Dharma that we talked about in the Vedic times have changed in the Sutra times and subsequently changed in the Itihasa times, and down it seems to be evolved. And the question that we are going to address is how we can redefine Dharma as befitting the age of Kali, or befitting the age of modernity or post-modernity for that matter. So while the basic ontological principle from which moral norms emerge stay across time and space, they stand unchanged. And for the foundational principles that provide the axiomatic bedrock for the rest, the exterior outer layers are kept flexible so that they can account for the changing values of both the nature and the culture. The nature also provides us its dharma, and the culture in turn evolves in terms of it. The scriptures, particularly the Smriti, have stated that dharma paradigm of each yuga should be cast differently. And this notion of yuga dharma, I think, as Professor Patel or Professor Bhatt would be the best expert to speak on that. As I know, it has been initiated in Mahabharata, and the notion that there has to be dharma redefined in tune with the changing cultural milieu has had its beginning with Mahabharata, and later on in the subsequent works we have had this theory at length addressed. Indian thinkers were quick to realize that a fossil and normative dharma would act like stagnant water, be filthy and turn water. Dharma was to be kept as a flowing river, drawing boundaries to the cultural landscapes, syncing well with the evolving life world of the people. Yuga Dharma, in brief, provides space for generating alternate religious practices. The religious practices should be made conducive and practicable in the changing times, the modes of worship, the rituals, and other austerities that form part of the Indian philosophical literature is replete with narratives on the adaptability of the concept of dharma. Starting with, as I've said, Mahabharata discusses how dharma undergoes creative reformulation at the hands of creative thinkers. And you have several of them in Mahabharata, Lord Krishna himself, Yudhishthira, Bhishma, several of them who have in-depth knowledge of both the philosophical tradition on hand and also creativity to reimagine it for the changing times. In modern times, we have one mastermind that comes to my mind as Gandhiji, who has wonderfully reimagined the question of dharma as fitting modern times. I can give you several examples. I remember how Bindu Puri has spoken about this some time back when we have organized a seminar. He was a spokesman of Yuga Dharma, Gandhiji, and he reminds us that one should be allowed to re-engage with Dharma, provided he has two qualifications. One, he should be thorough in the tradition. An outsider not come in all on a sudden and then lay his hands and then redo the Dharma. He should be an insider critic. He should be an insider to the Dharma, and on the other, he should not have any other agenda other than reimagining it for to revitalize it or recontextualize it to the befitting times. So that dharma is yuga specific, has been underscored by Sri Karunagara Guru. We have two focal points in this webinar, one on yuga dharma in general, and the other is the contributions of Sri Karunagara Guru towards this. I've been associated with this research foundation for more than a decade, and I have heard a lot on Sri Karunagara Guru. He has been eloquent on the need to redefine dharma as befitting the changing times. Guru has argued that only the naive and the uninformed would demand that the tradition handed down should be strictly followed without any modification, should be retained intact, and should be continued unwavering. Little they realize that these mummified fossils will remain dead and would be non-reactive. Gadamer beautifully speaks about it, and he says, a modern spokesman of the role of hermeneutics, points out that the creative and the committed practitioner of religion, see, all of us, or any one of us, who is a creative practitioner of a religion, in essence, he is a redefiner of the principles of religion. Though unknowingly he does that, and Gadamer says that is exactly what is being called for. An insider of the tradition is the one who is best authorized to revise it. A true practitioner of religion, while engaging himself with the text and the tradition, would be able to bring out new meanings and discuss automatically. Bring out the text and required practices that correspond to it. Unknowingly, unknown to himself, he seems to modify the practices and he seems to give fresh meaning to the text and the required practices that correspond to it. All, in some sense, pre-existing. So, what seems necessary for time is that let the young generation be familiarized with the tradition so that they'll be able to integrate our tradition. And Gupta famously said, Urdhurdhvam aruhya yadardham yadatatvam dhi pashyadi shrantim avedayandi padam tad adyai parikalpidana sopana paramparana. Everything has been predetermined in the very first text itself. So the present court would examine the concept of the Dharma rule in rejuvenating Hindu faith. So, the call is to the scholars here to apply your scholarship. It is not present scholarship, but rather it is time to apply your scholarship to redefine, to contextualize the Hindu Dharma so that it is placed in the changed scenario. Also keep in mind the pandemic that, and pandemic is revelatory in many senses. So keep also this present it in this platform as well, so that if we don't do it, no one will do it. This is our prime duty to lay our hands to apply our scholarship to revise and contextualize Hindu Dharma in terms of method and content, and it also takes us towards reimagining and reinterpreting India's mainstream religion, culture, and tradition as befitting our time. So the points we are going to discuss and winding up. We are going to focus on the concept of dharma and the need to contextualize it, the notion of yuga dharma, what is static and what is flexible in the concept of dharma, and then we'll also speak on contextualizing dharma, the challenges and prospects. What are the challenges that we are going to face while reimagining the notion of dharma, and the concept of yuga dharma and the revelatory things in the light of the revelatory teaching of Sri Karunagara Guru, and time and morality in ancient Indian tradition. Also the paradox of time and eternity. And Yuga Dharma is an attempt to humanize Hinduism. Thank you all for patiently listening. And once again, I welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Srila, sir, thank you. Thank you. And you have laid down the basic premises of our conference in a very granular, and you have pertinently noted the capacity of Sanatana Dharma to respond and to refresh in accordance with the changing time. It's the vital noticeable future of Sanatana Dharma, its capability to respond and to refresh itself in accordance with the time periods. And various facets of this conference is beautifully brought out. Thank you. Let me invite Professor Soma Bandyopadhyay to make her inaugural address. Welcome.
Namaskar. Suprabhatam, Namaskaram.
Namaskar.
Honorable Director of Santagiri Ashram, Swami Navanma Gyana Tapasvi, Honorable Chairman, IPC and former Chairman, ICPR, Professor S.R. Bhadji, very respected Professor K. Gopinath Pillai, Senior Fellow, Santagiri Institute of Culture and Human Development, Professor R.C. Sinha, Chairman, ICPR, all distinguished speakers, respected members of Santagiri Research Foundation, the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, and Nagananda International Institute of Buddhist Studies, and all the researchers who are present today. A very good morning to all of you. At the outset, let me congratulate the organizers, especially Professor K. Gopinath Pillai, Professor Srikala, Madam, and their team for zeroing on such an important and relevant topic as the relevance of Yuga Dharma in reforming Hindu religion. And I feel greatly honored to deliver the inaugural address, although I am not an expert in this field. Neither I am a philosopher nor a Sanskrit scholar, but I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity to enrich myself and the erudite scholars present in this coveted forum. And it is because of, Professor Bhatt's kindness and blessings, and of course, Gopinath sir, because of your kindness that I'm here today to share this platform with a few thoughts that I have in my mind. Because I believe that it's high time that we talk on the real-time picture of the Yuga Dharma. that how it was as depicted in our Vedic scriptures, how it is in the present, and how it should be in future. Yuga Dharma generally means an aspect of Dharma that is valid for a yuga only, or an epoch or age as established by our Hindu tradition. Like in Satya Yuga or the Golden Age, there was a different set of dharmas or laws. They changed into another form. In Dwapar, the dharmas were different from the dharmas of other yugas. And in Kali Yuga, which is the present yuga, the dharma have assumed still another form. The dharma changes according to the changes of the cycles. Man is a change. His nature gets transformed through experience. Hence, his external forum of dharma. During the Satya Yuga or Sat Yuga, as we call it, righteousness was supreme. People were virtuous and their duties without malice, anger, pride, or deceit. There was nothing to disturb the calmness of that age. In the Treta Yuga, changes in relationships started to occur. Duties were no longer the spontaneous laws of human behavior, but had to be learned. Sacrifices were needed. People followed truth and devoted themselves to righteousness through ceremonies, which are regarded as a means of obtaining specific objects. Dwapar Yuga witnessed increased imbalance along with a steady decline in righteousness. Then the Rig Veda came. Diseases, desires, and disasters harmed people, some of whom sought release in austerities or ritual practices. Finally, Kali Yuga, the dark age of today, as it is said, is riven with pain, quarrels, dissension, wars, and strife. Truth and justice started losing their importance. Possession, not righteousness, conferred rank, and the outer trappings are confused with inner religion. Now, Hindu sacred writings are broken into two groups, as we know. Shruti writings, such as the Vedas, regarded as timeless in character, and Smriti writings that focus on less timeless elements. We all know that Sanatana Dharma is based on the Shruti, whereas Yuga Dharma is based on the Smritis. Sanatana Dharma is described as the overall unchanging and abiding principles of Dharma, and describe Yuga Dharma as a lesser aspect of Dharma since it is constantly changing. Such scholars distinguish Sanatana Dharma as the Dharma of religion and Yuga Dharma as the Dharma of social interaction, law, ethics, etiquette, and so on. For every Yuga, the scriptures recommend a specific Dharma for spiritual perfection. This age is called Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, which characterizes all the good qualities of a human. It is said that qualities like satya, truthfulness, shauch, cleanliness, titiksha, tolerance, karuna, mercy, reduce day by day due to the influence of time. I remember one story related to this topic from Bhagavad Gita's Dasham Skand, that once Narada was passing by the riverside. There he happened to see a beautiful woman sitting by the side of the river. Two male bodies were lying near her and they were writhing in pain. The woman was crying helplessly. Narada then asked her, why was she crying? Who the bodies lying beside her were? She replied that those two were her sons, Viveka and Jnana. Two sons, Viveka and Jnana, and both were punished severely by Kali and were almost at death. So such is the influence of Kali that Viveka, Jnana, Titiksha are merely on the wane. Now, in this age of people have become quarrelsome and lazy. They lose their patience very fast. They are easily misled to forget the real goal of life due to different type of sense gratificatory diversions, like low standard, watching low standard movies, going to club, parties and mundane libraries, and several bad habits like smoking, drinking, being addicted to drugs, misuse of social media, etc. The duration of their life is shortened due to such unwanted and unhealthy practices. And their minds are always disturbed and full of anxieties. This leads to overall downfall of a society, which in turn jeopardizes the value system, which in turn again thwarts the holistic progress or development of society, be it social, political, and cultural. So what is the solution? It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although a ocean of faults, it has one quality. Kirtanade evam Krishnasya mukta sangrah param braje. Arthat, just by chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna, one can be relieved from the evil influences of this age and attain the highest spiritual perfection. This is the Yuga Dharma for Kali Yuga. The second realization that was achieved in the Satya millennium by meditation and in the Treta millennium by the performance of different sacrifices, and then in the Dwapar millennium by worship of Lord Krishna can be achieved in the age of Kali simply by chanting the holy names. Although the current Yuga Dharma for this age is debated amongst the traditions of our religion, within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the belief that the congregational dancing, singing, and chanting, that is the japa, Nam Jap, of Hare Krishna, Mahamantra, Yuga Dharma, as depicted in Ananta Samhita. Whereas for Sri Vaishnavism, the performance of Sharanagati or Prapti through the ritual Karam is the Yuga Dharma according to the older scripts text, the Vedas. Another aspect of the Yuga Dharma, Sri Vaishnavas, which backed by scripture, is surrender and devotion to Sri Venkateshwar or Balaji. As per ISKCON, it is the Krishna consciousness that says Yuga Dharma is chanting holy names of Lord Krishna. Chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Lord Chaitanya from our own Bengal had said, I quote, no other way, only Hari name can save one in Kali Yuga and bring back to home to the God. Hare Nama Eva Kaivalam. Anyways, all these beliefs say that chanting this Mahamantra, we factually get associated with the Lord. This is the easiest, most practical and direct method of re-establishing our connection with the Lord. How? Because it is this process of chanting the holy names that delivers the mind from vices and helps us to progress spiritually. Similarly, I remember Sant Tulsidas, the Bhakt Kavi, Bhaktkalin Kavi of Hindi literature, who gave the mantra of Ram Nam Kalikamadaru. So where he used to say that chanting the holy name of Sri Rama is the only means of deliverance in the Kali Yuga. But all said and done, only chanting names without a pure heart, a pious heart, wouldn't do any good to the human being. If life is tough in this Kali Yuga, that is because day and night we are dealing with problems like depression, stress, anxiety, fear psychosis, becoming too much money-minded, etc., which actually our unlawful activities have given birth to. Now, we are today devoid of compassion, kindness, and tolerance, as propounded by our Lord Buddha, as mentioned, as the main three pillars of polity of uniformity with equity. Now, laws do not have to be just written in statute or acts by our politicians or lawmakers. Nature has its own set of laws too. Throughout the universe, when there are too much unlawful activities going on, nature takes its own course. And that is why all kinds of natural calamities take place. I feel right now, the pandemic situation that we are facing now has also been created by us only. Now, anyway, Swami Vivekananda, one of our greatest philosophers, saint, has beautifully described the difference between Sanatan Dharma and Yuga Dharma. About Sanatan Dharma, he says that one said that is the Sanatan Dharma is that which abides forever, being built upon the nature of man, the nature of the soul's relation to the God, the nature of perfection, and so on. There are also the principles of cosmology, of the infinitude of creation, or more correctly speaking, the wonderful laws of cyclical precession and so on. These are the eternal principles founded upon the universal laws of nature. About Yuga Dharma, he says, the other set comprises the minor laws which guide the working of our everyday life. They belong more properly to the Puranas, to the Smritis, and not to the Shruti. These have nothing to do with the other principles. Even in India, these minor laws have been changing all the time. Now, man, the supreme creation of God, although born as a human child, cannot be called a man when grown up if he does not achieve or attain the humanly or godly qualities by the process of being grown up. Sri Ramakrishna Dev, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Dev, he has said, Manush. Manush means Man and Hush. Man means Atma Samman, that is self-respect, the glory of human birth. As a species, man is at the top of the creations, and Hush means Hosh, that is Chaitanya, that is conscious. So man should always be alert and feel at every moment in his lifestyle, all his deeds, thinking, decision, and determination that he should express humanity, the divine inner quality of heart. Just as I said a few moments back, that only by chanting names without a pious heart won't do anything good to the human. So, Sri Ramakrishna Deva depicted nicely the only goal of a man is to realize God. To know God, to realize God is the only sign of knowledge. Wisdom, jnana, vidya, the rest is ajnana, avidya, unwiseness. Sri Ramakrishna Deva's universal blessing was, in Bengali he said, Tomadir Chaitanya Hok. That means, let yourself be blessed with Chaitanya, consciousness. Similarly, Swami Vivekananda's concept of man was a lofty one. Man is not really a species, but an idol of God. If one is born as a man, he is the son of God, the holiness, from all sorts of ugliness, pure and absolute. All the wrongs, badness, evil motives are only outwardly. It's just like a black coating over a glass chimney of a lamp. Actually, the coating of the business over the soul, over our soul, that is the Atman, the Brahman, the eternal bliss. Each man is potentially divine. No man should be neglected or hated. Sufficient care is taken for each and everybody with proper system of education. The original form of inner man, the quality of divine personality can be expressed and manifested by each and every student to make the society as the domain of God. Free from all tussles, all corruptions, all problems, all exploitations. Man lives in a society. Man is most important factor, central character, heroes of all drama in the society. Man, out of his own interest, should make the society beautiful. He must do it, but the simple fact is not realized by most of us. Swami Vivekananda thought the society of men is made a hell, corrupted, polluted badly by the members of the society only. Maximum people are poor, very few are affluent, but they collect and accumulate all the wealth, comfort, enjoyment of society for themselves by denying, by deceiving the right of the poor, by exploiting, by oppressing the poor in the most stringent way. It is utterly difficult for the poor men to live. Poor people do not get food, clothing, shelter, education, and health. Extreme poverty takes away their identity as a man. Famine makes the death toll. Their very existence becomes questionable. By the whole day's hard labor, they cannot even manage to get a single meal for their families. The sons of gods are reduced to beings. These pangs of poverty of the poor mass actually made Swami Vivekananda restless. As the greatest humanist of all time, of all age, he shared their pain, much magnified in the very core of his heart. He determined not to neglect the matter, but to find out the way. after the sad demise of his guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Vivekananda covered the entire India on food. Notice the wretched plight of his beloved, poor countrymen. He dived in the Indian Ocean and swam to the last rock, that is in Kerala only, and meditated for 3 whole days. Lastly, he got the answer from within him. The answer was education, education, and education. What education has got to do with this social calamity? Yes. Education is the mantra by which every problem can be solved. Man is at the pivot of the circle of the society. Man is the cause and effect of all the evil and all the good equally in the society. So man is to be educated first properly and made proper citizen to act in the right direction to make the society good, a place of God. And making education was his mission. And that is what I feel exactly should be the Yuga Dharma. Before we proceed, to discuss man-making education, certain factors are to be considered. By his deep insight, Swami Vivekananda perceived every nation has its own specialty, such that Europe has business, for India it is religion. The nation has got to preserve this specialty. When the same is overlooked or ignored, the nation gets demeaned. He advised everything in India is to be done keeping the religion, quote unquote, factor intact. Otherwise, there will be social jeopardy. It is a fact he analyzed. The cause of downfall of India, neglect of the poor. Because we must consider the gist of our religion. The Vedanta says the same God, the Brahman, the Atman, the soul is present in all beings, in all forms and particles of nature. Sarvang Kalidam Brahman. So we are sons of God. We must not forget the brotherly relations. But this gem of thought is overlooked in government administration, which led to a social turmoil resulting maximum in abject poverty. Even after so many years of independence, a major section of the people, nearly 60%, live below poverty level. Swami Vivekananda proclaimed, the religion which cannot feed the poor people, cannot wipe out the tears of which cannot feed the poor people, cannot wipe out the tears of widows, is not wanted. The philosophy of Vedanta attracted him most. After his heroic win at Chicago, he stayed over there for a considerable period, delivering lectures on Vedanta in different clubs, associations, institutions, and invited by them. Vedanta encourages most scientifically all-round extreme development, each and every individual person of the society. So Swamiji declared, every member of the society ought to have the same opportunity to achieve wealth, education, and knowledge. He questioned, if the downtrodden class get education and wealth, will the society collapse? Who comprise the society? The millions of poor or a few aristocratic people. He was against the monopoly of education and wealth at the hands of the rich people. Macaulay's education system was planned and designed most correctly, as Swamiji said, to promote a few elements in the society, banning educational for all and creating an attitude of despair in the mass. It was deeply disturbed. For the poor people of the society who were deprived of education, he murmured, I quote, he said, traveled over many countries of Europe, observing the difference of life and lot of the working man of those countries with that of our country. He said, putting the question why, he got the answer, lack of education. So it should be the marked characteristic of the proper system and ideal system of education that each and every son of the soil, every student should be equipped rightly so that he can stand stable on his feet to earn decent livelihood. He suggested vocational training arrangement must be provided in the system of education. And one more thing, Vedanta does not advocate any special power, special concession, and special privilege for anybody. But our present so-called civilized society in the globe, in developed countries, like America, Britain, France, Germany, and in developing countries like ours, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Iran, etc., too stands profoundly on the foundation of special power, special concession, and special privilege, which is the root cause of all sorts of exploitation to the poor. Swamiji said, I am against all sorts of exploitation. I am socialist. There is another cause too. He viewed the entire problem historically or analyzed the same with socio-economic aspect. He observed the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas all have ruled the society or the country for ages by turn. Now the turn has come to Shudras. We can check socialism, capturing the power by Sudras, the working class, the proletariat. Socialism will come first either in Russia, and his far-sightedness did not fail. The administrative power was captured by the proletariat of Russia and China. Socialism came, but these two countries could not continue retain socialism for long. The banning of private production, which is the only marked character of socialism, was lifted, permitting private production again, bringing down the flag of socialism. But why? The answer is absence of proper system of education, which will upgrade the mind of every individual man of the society, having no demand for quote unquote more wealth, property, and comfort. Let us now look for Swami Vivekananda's thesis. Although socialism only can provide guarantee for food, clothes, shelter, education, and health need for each and every person of the country, provide smile for the poor people, even then, Swami Vivekananda considered socialism as second best. Because in socialism, also man is concerned only with material existence, living a complicated life of enjoyment, but with equal allotment for everyone. This was pointed by Swamiji. Man is the supreme creation of God. Man is basically pure, liberated, absolute, the soul, the Atma, the Brahman. He cannot be contented merely with personal enjoyment with 5 senses. Rather, he should enlighten his soul by sadhana, like a true Brahmin. Sri Ramakrishna Deva had told that the only goal of man is to realize God. So he should not forget at any moment of his life this godly sentiment. He must be imbibed with God consciousness. A God-fearing man will think many times before doing anything. So actually, according to Swamiji, following Vedantas, the entire living and non-living world with human society is termed as God. Moreover, the process of attaining God consciousness brings one away from greed and temptation and leads one to analyze one's every action, whether good or bad, for one and also for the society. This is a most viral issue. This brings lack of extreme enjoyment of life with 5 senses. Also, a man gets prepared to do bad. Ripus, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, and Matsarya. Thus, the issue of God consciousness in every man will protect him from indulging in corruption. On the other hand, it imbibes in him self-respect that he is the son of God, the king of kings. He cannot be involved in the filthy and mean work to collect money, wealth, and property for material gain. Moreover, every man will think, I do not want, quote unquote, more for material existence. This thought will lead to enormous development of a society as a whole in all directions. This is how our earth can then be converted to heaven, a place free from corruption and exploitation, but filled with peace and prosperity. The people of India was guided by this philosophy since ancient times. This is not new in India. Simple living and high thinking was the essence of Indian lifestyle. So there must prevail a precondition in socialism to have arrangement, to introduce the process of attaining God consciousness for every man, even who are in the administration, having power to frame the rules for the country. Otherwise, those Sudras, the leaders of the proletariat, will occupy the key position in the administration, having the power to frame the policy matter, will be the cause of tyranny and oppression of the other Sudras who are being ruled. And this will not do good. Think good for all the people, resulting in the downfall of socialism ultimately. So the process of attaining God consciousness should be linked with the compulsory education system from the primary level itself. Truth. And actually, Actually, Tagore's song, Tagore wrote it in Bengali, Amra Sabai Raja Amadere Raja Rajatte. That means we are all kings in this kingdom of kings. That expresses the same thought. Everyone will work manually or intellectually for the good of the God, the society or country as a whole, having no individual demand for quote unquote more, creating no financial discrimination, which is the root cause of all exploitation, condemning the present form of status-oriented structure of the society. And the status-oriented financial discrimination comes from discrimination in educational qualification determined and derived from existing defective education system, depriving best education for all. So this project's true sense of the term, Shivagane Jiva Seva, of Sri Ramakrishna Deva and of Swamiji, Swamiji said, Atmana mokshartham jagat dhitaya cha bahujana sukhaya bahujana hitaya cha. So, if you can go by his teachings, I'm sure this will be the right Dharma in this Kali Yuga, which will promote all social, cultural, political developments. I would like to stop here with a small quote from our book of ethics that I studied in my childhood. I still remember lines that goes as this. For the good of the village, a man ought to give up his family. For the good of a country, he ought to give up his village. For the good of humanity, he may give up his country. And for the good of the world, everything. Everything. So, Kushalam Sarvalokanam, Kushalam Kushalam Tava. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Soma Bandhavadhyaya, for your very illuminating and excellent presentation. And you have very well brought out the multifaceted dimensions of our spirituality, culture, Sanatana Dharma in connection with Yuga Dharma. And you noted down that, by the by, Dharmanarayan ji, sorry for making you waited for this conference, sorry. Then you very beautifully talked on Vedanta. And, in all beings, that radiance of the Brahman is embedded. It is true. And Vedanta is the supreme knowledge. That supreme knowledge is to be translated into practice in accordance with the time and space. It is Yuga Dharma, Dharma of a particular Yuga. The supreme knowledge, Sanatana Dharma, eternal principles, laws are there always. It is an abstract. But it is to be translated into practice in accordance with the time. There lies the importance of great Kalandra Gurus. We don't know, because we are going by traditions and practices over years. And when these traditions are fossilized, deviated, the generations
Please switch off the mic. Mute your mic, please.
Please switch off the mic. Unmute.
Ask everyone to mute the mic, please.
So please, therefore, because your presentation showed your depth in Vedanta or different, spiritual scriptures. But my humble submission is that because you are all great scholars, can we elevate? Because in Kali Yuga, in only Kali Yuga, we find that Treta Yuga had its own. We had Sri Rama, we have Yajna, all other forms. There had been guidance of great gurus. In Dwapara also we find Devi, Deva, whatever you did, you got everything. All the blessings we got in Dwapara also. But in Kali is being described, illustrated, not in the right form. because of the eclipse of Jnanamarga and the curse I referred earlier. One curse occurred in the third Chaturayuga. Whenever Kali Yuga comes, there is chaos and mishaps, because from Kali Yuga, this higher elevation of the soul is arrested in all the Kali Yugas because of that curse. This was never revealed to great Acharyas. So I am not claiming, but one humble submission. In Shantigiri in 1973, it was revealed from Brahma Prakasham. Because of that curse, humanity could not go beyond that Trimurti stage of spirituality. Therefore, in Kali Yuga, everything get entangled and in a very bad shape. We are unable to go beyond. So, in accordance with the changing times, we have to change our religious faiths. See, why Christ came, Nabi came, they were all the gurus of this Kali Yuga. Buddha came. Krishna very well Swami Navadanma Jnana Tapasvi to make his presentation. Swami Navadanma Jnana Tapasvi, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Swami?
Yeah, I can.
Please make your presentation.
Okay. Om Shri Karuna Guru Parabhrahmane Namah. Om Shri Karuna Guru Satya Pradaya Namah. Om Shri Karuna Guru Adeva Satya Prakashaya Namah. Om Shri Karuna Guru Adeva Satya Prakashaya Namah. Om Shri Karuna Guru Adeva Satya Prakashaya Namah. Sadguru Sharanam. Distinguished guests, elegant speakers, and those who are listening me, pranam all of you. This is an auspicious occasion as far as I'm concerned, because here we are discussing a special subject. Even if it is our traditional term, knowledge, custom, system. But as far as the present scenario is concerned, the term dharma is a very complicated and very, very misinterpreted thing. So what I would like to share with all of you is based on the vision of my Guru, Navajyoti Sri Karunagaru, the founder Guru of Shantigiri Ashram. Yuga Dharma. Dharma has many definitions and many interpretations given by scholars and even the great Mahatmas incarnated in our tradition. So here the subject, the relevance of Yuga Dharma in reforming Hindu religion is a very significant subject, because we know the term Hindu Dharma and Sanatana Dharma. So most of the people in our country is believing that Hindu Dharma is equal to Sanatana Dharma, or both are same. But there is a little bit difference between these two. Why I say this in such a way is purely on the basis of Guru's vision and advice, teachings. We know Hindu Dharma is a Dharma which is familiar to us on the basis of the scriptures and the written materials available to us today. But as far as Sanatana Dharma is concerned, it was a Dharma, or it is Dharma, which was not based on the scriptures, which learned it from scriptures, because that Dharma is to be specially learned from the face or the mouth of a Dharmi. Here is the significance of Guru tradition in our country, in our tradition. As all of us know, Guru tradition was the very traditional concept, spirituality and culture prevailed in our country, Bharatam. But unfortunately, we deviated much from that mainstream of spirituality to a stream of religion. That is what going on not only in India but everywhere in the world. Religion, of course, it's a great thing. It is not a thing which is to be given away or give up away. It is the thought from the very what we say great soul appear on earth at different time according to that supreme will. We know many religions in the world. We are all the part and parcel of each and every religion. But here, one important thing is whether this religion is incorporated with the spiritual knowledge or spirituality or spiritual science, or whenever and wherever there is the variation of spiritual concepts in the religion, the existence of that religion will be accordingly. So if there is a very rich spiritual philosophy or spiritual concept or spiritual ethics in a religion, that religion will exist for a long period. If the spirituality incorporated in the religion or associated or conceived by the religion is not up to the level, it will never sustain forever. And that religious thought will vanish or will disappear when the time passes. So here is the most important thing on the basis of which we have to consider and discuss all these philosophical thought in these coming days. That is the Sanatana Dharma or the Yuga Dharma and the Dharma in the religion. So as I mentioned earlier, Dharma has many meaningful planes. In some occasions, we know that Dharma is the nature. In some occasions, we know Dharma, we say that Dharma is the responsibility, it is the duty. And in some other occasions, we learned that Dharma is the great thoughts and the way of life being a model exhibited or practiced by the great souls in our tradition, like Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, Buddha, Prophet Muhammad, Jesus Christ, and so and so. So all these are the concepts of Dharma prevailing at present in our mind and also in written materials. But Guru reminded once, Dharma is not actually a mere knowledge or mere duty or responsibility. Dharma is the wisdom or is the ultimate knowledge with which one can transform his soul to the higher profile, to the higher plane. It is not only the evolution of soul of a particular individual. It is actually a knowledge with which everybody, everything in this world can come up, can go up. That is why in our tradition, there was a great thought, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which means everything in this world should get peace and prosperity. That means the right to exist and the freedom to evolve. So actually, this is the main aspect of Dharma, which is to be conceived by each and every individual being, human being in the world. So actually, on what basis we can assure this thought, or in whom we have to orient to assure this thought, because it is not a genuine human thought. Even if there is a thought which we can conceive either from the mind of an individual, I mean, teachings of the text, or maybe appear in the mind itself from the nature, with the grace of God, a very divine and elevated thought. But what the karmagati with which we are binded will be a hurdle in this occasion, in this situation. Because all of us know that thinking about something is very easy, but practicing according to that thought is very difficult. And fulfilling that practice with its perfect fruit is more difficult than practicing it. So there are different layers of thought and action. So here is the significance of dharma. Dharma is that knowledge with which we have to perform the practice so as to hurdle or so as to curtail these hurdles which are blocking us from this evolution of thoughts and karmic capability. So karma and dharma is closely associated. One have to perform the karma according to the dharma, but that dharma is to be obtained from somewhere else where all the karmic obstacles and hurdles are to be cleansed with the sankalpam or the thought or the prayer or the determination of the person from whose mouth, whose face we are getting it. So here is the significance of guru and a disciple relation. So life in our tradition was flown on the basis of this guru disciple order. Actually, that guru disciple order is the backbone of Sanatana Dharma, or Sanatana Dharma was the skeleton with which this guru disciple oriented or way of life was practiced or existed in our tradition. So this guru disciple relation oriented or guru disciple oriented way of life is the Guru Margam, and a prayer so as to get something, so as to keep away the hurdles, or so as to obtain something in our life or attain something in our life as a goal. So this conditional prayers and the tantra, mantra, the ways and the many rites and rituals we are practicing for the well-being and goodness of our life in front of a particular deity erected or what we say put in the sanctuarium of a auspicious divine prayer area, prayer focus is the most familiar and contemporarily practicing way of spirituality. So here the spirituality has two phases. One is the true knowledge which one conceives from the face of Guru, advice from Guru, and the blessings which one can conceive from the deity. So this way of life based on which we are getting some blessing is the way of Hinduism. Most probably we are practicing that way of spiritual culture and practice in our life. But our tradition taught us a wonderful way. That's what is called Guru Margam. In Guru Margam, the Guru, being the authority to give even mukti or moksha to Devi Devas, was the supreme authority and the prime focus with which the disciple oriented the spiritual culture and life or that spiritual system. So that spirit attained the perfection, manifest in the form of Guru, was the supreme, and this was the Egam, Egattum. So Nanatum is there in our society, in Hindu religion, in Sanatana Dharma. That Nanatum is the different entities expecting or evolving systematically through the way of. So if we want to get, of course, we have to go beyond mukti. We have to go beyond this blessing and what we say, the tantra, mantra, or whatever the systematic procedure with which we practice the spiritual practices in our time in India. We have to get the grace and the guidance of a perfect soul who born on earth according to that supreme will. So here is the significance of Yuga Dharma. Yuga Dharma is the dharma which we get through a dharmi born in that particular yugam. So that dharmi, being the authority of the dharma of that particular yugam, will be the sole authority of that yugam. That is why in each and every yuga, there are a group of a number of gurus, and that span of time, which is little bit bigger than yuga, is called Manu. That Manundram is the period where the dharma of that entire period is being executed on the basis of the guru being the authority of that Manundram is called Manu. And 14 Manus are there. Beyond these 14 Manu, there is a Adi Guru called Adi Purushan, or that embodiment of the Almighty, embodiment of the Brahma, embodiment of the supreme power, supreme light. That is Brahmanan. Brahmanan means a Kalpa Guru. So a Kalpa Guru, Manus, and in each and every Chaturayuga, there are many gurus belong to that particular Chaturayuga, and there are many supreme souls appear on earth at different time, being the guide and saviors of humanity for that particular time. So there are many divisions and orders like that, being a flow of guru and the authorized persons of from that guru, and the persons or the society living the life orienting on that particular guru, maintaining the dharma, obeying the words from the mouth of guru, and depending that guru being the sole authority to get solved all the issues in life. Issues in life means not the material issues in life, what the spiritual issues internally one faces in his life, being the pathetic situation of life, being the glittering success of life. In each and every moment, one faces these different experiences on the basis of the karmic bondage in the soul, which finally exhibit or contribute either the virtue or the bad omen through his thoughts, words, deeds. So, irrespective of good and bad, right and wrong, pain and pleasure, we have to go beyond. So that journey to go beyond, cutting the karmic bondage in the soul through the past karmas and past worships and ancestral souls, and there are many streams like that. So Guru, being an authority of that particular time, is only the authority to put hands on these aspects of hurdles of soul. So that Guru disciple oriented way of Guru Margam being the part of Sanatana Dharma, and there are some forms, names, and forces, powers, being the deities worshipped in different places in different way as the part of Devi Deva Margam, Deva Margam. These are the two streams which we can very visibly note in the tradition and in the contemporary spiritual or religious plane of our country, Bharata. So here is the significance of the topic which we are discussing here, the relevance of Yuga Dharma in reforming Hindu religion. So Hindu religion needs a very urgent reformation, because that's a very deep subject actually. the Varnashrama Dharmam, Chadurvarnyam, Sanatana Dharmam, Hindu Dharmam. There are many dimensions and disparities are there. Even if we express or substantiate everything on the basis of some dialogues and intelligent interpretations of written philosophies, there should be a practice with which we have to come up, with which we have to be a great society, having a great culture, wisdom, love, oneness. And all these were the great thoughts of Sanatana Dharma. But unfortunately, we lost all these things and we classified into different groups, different deities, different worship, different, so and so. So fortunately, this is the occasion, or occasions like this will bring up the pathetic situation of Indian culture and Hindu society to come up and reform through the proper thought of our spiritual philosophy and the proper way of life with the grace of God, identifying the great souls and great people, gurus born in the world. So Navajyotishree Karunagara Guru is mentioning that if Hinduism die, the every religion will be dead earlier. So whenever Hinduism exists, Hinduism means Sanatana Dharma in that sense, exist or reform, then only we can maintain the peaceful and compassionate life